Hello, and welcome to Community Voices, where we talk to Humboldt County's movers and shakers. Today's guest, Melisa Potts, California Parks Foundation. And now here's your host, Paul Bressoud.
Hello, and welcome to Access Humboldt's Community Voices. I'm Paul Bressoud, I'm your host, and today our guest is Melisa Potts. She is the Volunteer Program Manager for the California State Parks Foundation. And Melisa, what is that? What is your job? What does that title include?
Good morning. I am really happy to be here with you all today. As volunteer program manager, I am so lucky to be able to work with park partners across the state. I work with a variety of park staff, whether they're environmental scientists, chief of maintenance, or interpretation, and kind of do a lot of like field trips and education in the park. And with all of those different people, we work to bring the community into the park and volunteer on projects that really just support park staff. It's really unfortunate that a lot of our parks are understaffed and under-resourced. And so when I'm able to bring in and recruit volunteers from a community, the power of having 30 people to focus on one project really helps our staff for something that might take them like a week or 2 weeks with, just one or two people. And so we really focus on building community around these parks, and I am just so lucky to be able to be inspired by our volunteers that come month after month and really get involved in their state parks and want to give back to the community.
Well, let's take a step back first, and let's explain to the folks out there in our TV audience. There are 281 state parks in California, correct?
That's correct.
And that's north to south, east to west.
Yes.
And your program staffs volunteers to go to all 281 parks?
So one day, hopefully, as a small nonprofit, we're only able to be active in about 30 parks right now with the volunteer program. But we do have a statewide presence with those. So from San Diego all the way up to Humboldt, with hubs in between Los Angeles, Monterey, and the Bay Area.
Well, when you say 30 parks right now, does that mean, is that 30 parks on a rotational level, or is that 30 parks in which you have a permanent presence?
So permanent presence with the caveat that I'd say about half of those parks are year-round. They need help 12 months out of the year, but sometimes, California is such a vast state, and sometimes during the summer we have to take a pause just for safety. It gets a little too hot here in Southern California. Some of our parks have like snow, so there is a seasonality to some of these sites, and we work closely with the park staff to decide how many months out of the year they would like us to be there. So if it's 12 months, we have capacity for that at these sites. If it's just 5 months out of the year, and we have a select few of parks that really just need help during the busy seasons to prep for things like a campground opening or to like pick up trash after a busy holiday weekend. So I would say it varies year to year, but we have a set number of parks that we're at.
So you say you're in the Los Angeles area right now?
That is correct, yes.
That's where you coordinate the program from?
Yeah. So I previously was in Sacramento. Our main office is in San Francisco, but a few of us are working full-time remotely. It really does benefit to have staff throughout the state, since we're doing so many programs throughout the state. So I travel a lot. I'm actually coming up to Humboldt next month, and I'll be in San Diego next week. So we try to make sure that we're also present at some of these sites when possible.
And just to give people an idea of the diversity of California parks, when you were mentioning where the parks were located, so you said San Diego, then Los Angeles, and then worked your way up the coast. Some of these parks are actually in urban areas, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. A lot of people don't like drive into a city of Los Angeles and think, I'm going to go find my local state park. But there's so much, along the LA River. And I think we have 3 state parks that we are active at there, as well as, obviously the Santa Monica Mountains is also. So the definition of a state park, I like to kind of challenge folks on what that means. 280 of them, there's just so much to explore. And some of them are 5 acres and, some of them are hundreds of acres. So some of our urban parks are really special.
Well, challenge me on what my perception of them is, because as I read on your website, some of them are landed areas, but some of them are also the restoration and the saving of historical sites and buildings, correct?
Correct. For example, we have Los Angeles State Historic Park, or even Old Town San Diego State Historic Park that, really have so much history. And one of them in LA was a former rail station and train yard, and that has been kind of restored into this beautiful green space, as well as a point for us to have restoration and really be a green connectivity for wildlife in the city. I think that's really important for a lot of our urban parks as well, is being able to not only provide the community with green space for all of the health and mental health benefits that they have for people, but also for our wildlife. So insects and migrating birds, they need places to stop in these urban cities. And so a lot of the work that we do has them. And then that added layer is history sometimes. And so a lot of these historical sites really have deep history of like how California started, and just maybe even the beginning of how some of these cities were before they expanded into what we know today. So lots of layers and fun things to find at our state parks.
Now, does the diversity of the parks and the type of needs I would think they would have for their upkeep or their maintenance, does that make it a challenge to find volunteers, as far as volunteers that are qualified in different areas?
That's the great thing about our program. Sometimes certain programs really have this long list of requirements and knowledge and background, but the way that our model works really is to invite anyone and everyone to join. So you don't even have to have gone to a park before. You've never had to touch a shovel or a pickaxe. We have park staff on site to have an overview and welcome before every meeting or every work day. We will then go over just the project, the importance of the project, how to use certain tools that we'll be using during the day. And then also, we're there throughout the workday if anyone has any questions. But we teach you everything you need to know, and we provide all of the tools. Obviously, if you have your favorite gloves or kind of something like that, you're more than welcome to bring it. But we really do have a mix. So obviously we have repeat volunteers that are experts and have been doing this for sometimes even, up to a decade with us. And other times there's some people, I just met someone who lived really close next to one of the parks, so just 5 minutes away, had never been, and joined us, and successfully planted her first plant and watered and learned so much about her native species and how they're helping in that park. So really super easy for us to join us. And then you also don't have to have a time commitment. You can come every month. You can sign up once a month, once a year. We're here when you're ready and when you're available. We understand that kind of life is really busy, but when you want to give back, you can always just check out our website and sign up, and we give you all the information you need to have a successful day with us.
Now, do you have, through your organization, when you say people come and receive training before they do the work at any location, do you have mentors within your organization that are going to teach us, the volunteers, as we go out and try to participate in the volunteer program?
Yeah, so in addition to our uniformed park staff partners, or maybe it's another nonprofit we're working for, we have what we call volunteer core leaders here at California State Parks Foundation. And so it's a really unique model in the sense that these are just super volunteers that wanted to deepen their involvement with our organization and the program. And so they work closely with myself and park staff to plan and lead the work days. And they're also just have so much expertise and knowledge and and we're really lucky to have about 45 of them throughout the state. If you're interested in becoming a core leader, we have trainings twice a year and info sessions coming up. And so feel free to check out our website and join our community of leaders.
And we want to tell people it's an amazingly easy website to navigate. I don't know how specific. This could be a very specific question for you, but I see that there's 2 work days coming up, one in Trinidad at Trinidad State Beach and one at Big Lagoon. Do you have an idea of what people would be doing at those 2, volunteer opportunities?
Yeah, we're really excited to be relaunching in Humboldt. I work with the amazing Natural Resources Department there. I want to give them a great shout out. At Trinidad State Beach, we really do focus on restoration of the Sitka spruce forest as well as the coastal scrub habitats. And so, these are really 2 really unique habitats in California, and we're throughout the state, we have what we call invasive or non-native species that like to just thrive and grow maybe a little bit better than our native species sometimes. And so at these sites, we focus on removing some of those species, such as English ivy, kind of any Scotch or French broom, wild onion, and I think my favorite of the invasive names, at least, is stinky bob. So we have these specific plants that we like to, that the Natural Resources Department has identified could impact the native habitat there. And so we have gloves and pickaxes and trash bags, and we kind of remove those species so that all of the native species can start to have the space to naturally reseed and grow and thrive at Trinidad. At Humboldt Lagoons, we focus primarily on restoration for azalea groves. I'm not sure if we can put a picture up in here, but I highly recommend you Googling azaleas. They have this wonderful, beautiful flower display. The grove in Humboldt Lagoons is really one of the last few remaining wild groves in California, and so it's really important for us to protect that really unique and endangered species. And so we remove just native and non-native plants from around the grove to make sure that, once again, they're preserved and protected for future visitors to enjoy, as well as all of the benefits they have to the natural ecosystem there.
Going back to an earlier comment you made, is it politically correct for a person in your position to have a favorite invasive species?
Probably not. Well, that's a tricky question, right? So my political answer is that no plant in of itself is, I don't want to say the word evil, but no plant is a bad plant, right? So it's just not always in the right space, and it doesn't always isn't always conducive to that ecosystem and environment, right? So a lot of our invasive species, we have folks tell us that they grew up making a tea out of that, or there's been a lot of botanical uses for even some of these species that, we are removing. And oftentimes we're on the trail and people are like, why are you taking out the mustard or kind of some species or ice plant that actually does produce a beautiful flower? And to someone who doesn't have a knowledge of ecology and kind of ecosystems or understand why we're doing certain things, it really is always a funny conversation to kind of explain that while it's really beautiful and some people might enjoy looking at this plant, it really has so much threat and devastation to some of our parks. And so not all plants are bad, but sometimes we do have to remove some of them.
There you go. Well, some staggering statistics: 281 parks in the state of California, 81 million visitors a year. But a statistic I'd like to know is, how many volunteers do you think work for your program during the year?
Yeah, so at our 30 parks, we have about 100 work days each year, and it varies, but I believe last year we had a little over 2,000 volunteers join us for 2022. So we're just really thrilled to have that many people join us and give back to their parks.
Fantastic. I'd like to ask some historical questions, if I may, and some government questions.
Sure.
First of all, this is not a government organization, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So California State Parks Foundation is an independent member-supported nonprofit, and we are dedicated to protecting and preserving California state park system for the benefit of all. We work really closely with the state and government, and obviously our name kind of gets confused sometimes, but we are separate.
As I read the information on the website, I kind of thought of your organization as a supplement to the park system. Would that be a fair, depiction of it?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And it's not just our organization. We work with so many nonprofits and give grants to other organizations that are doing amazing work in our state parks. It really is a parks community and a park to really make sure that our parks have everything that they need to thrive.
As I read the wonderful historical information on your website, I was fascinated by William Penn Mott Jr., the founder of your organization, that he was actually the director of parks in the 1960s under Ronald Reagan, but had the foresight to see that this supplemental organization would have a real place and there would be a real need for them in the future. I just wanted to know if you knew much about this person and why he wound up having that foresight and starting the organization.
Yeah, I think that, his role as a director, really, he was able to see kind of the limitations sometimes and also, kind of the gaps in which there was for the state park system. And so, we're really excited to continue his legacy here with California State Parks. And like you mentioned, so we collaborate with partners in the field, so direct programming, but we also partner in the state legislature in Sacramento to address these critical issues that our founder helped really create that vision for.
I'm going to put that question on the back burner. Because there's something I want to ask you about your answer that you just gave. I want to know, in relation to this, did he found this organization because he feared that California wouldn't properly fund the 281 state parks that existed in the state?
I can't speak for William, but I do think that he did recognize the importance of having sustainable and adequate funding for our parks, and that's something that we fight for in the legislature and work with other nonprofits to lobby for certain bills. And right now, actually, we're in the middle of the state budget process, and so which will kind of continue through the summer, I believe. So funding is really a keystone issue for our organization, and I like to think that he had the foresight to understand the importance of that.
Now, do you have lobbyists that work for your organization?
We do. So we have a government affairs team. So we have a small staff that work really closely with our lobbyists to just make sure that we're on top of all the bills and, really have on the ground representative in Sacramento.
And have you done that yourself?
That is not in my volunteer manager duties, but we have some really great opportunities for our staff as well as our members and other advocates to join us. In May of every year, we have what we call Park Advocacy Day. And so that's when all of our staff are there. We bring in park advocates and park champions to meet with their local legislators. So we schedule meetings all day and generally have some sort of training the day and beforehand to really highlight the bills and kind of different legislative items and challenges kind of on the docket for state parks that year. And then the people from their community get to meet with their legislator and share their stories and really advocate for why a certain bill should or shouldn't be passed. And so Park Advocacy Day will be happening again this May. So keep a lookout and hopefully we see some of you in Sacramento.
Well, let me ask that question. Is that something that we, the people, can do? Can we join in Park Advocacy Day? And if we did, would that be in a show of numbers? Would that be to actually meet with people?
Yeah, so that is a public day, and so we have emails going out. I don't know exactly when, but I encourage everyone to sign up for our email list, and we will share how you can whether or not you're in person or virtually participate in our Park Advocacy Day events. Oftentimes we'll even have webinars. There's action alerts and kind of petitions to sign. So we understand not everyone can make it to Sacramento, but we have a great list of different ways for folks to get involved. And we try to be that conduit and really keep everyone up to date so that you all don't have to. We're kind of the experts and keeping an eye on everything. So if something comes up, our email list will let folks know how they can get involved.
How many different organizations and groups do you partner with when you are advocating for the parks?
Oh, I don't know quite the number, but we have an amazing partnerships program and just community of advocates in Sacramento. So that ranges from everything from other fellow nonprofits who are like friends of groups to parks, people who are what we call nonprofit operators. So there's a select few of state parks that actually are operated and managed by nonprofits. And so, for example, Friends of China Camp. We also partner with people like local Audubon chapters or Sierra Club chapters. So, it really is, like I said, that parks community of just organizations focusing on all large things and small for our parks.
As you say this, lobbyists and volunteer coordinators, and I'm sure there's people that are handling the funding operation. How large is your operation? I mean, you got people in Sacramento, San Francisco, Los Angeles. I mean, how many people are working for the nonprofit and the different departments that exist for the volunteer program or not just the volunteer program, for the entire California State Parks Foundation?
Yeah, so we, like most nonprofits, are a really small team. I think we're at 20, maybe 23 employees right now. And so, that network of members and volunteers and advocates and partners really is important for all of the impact, to create all of the impact for our state parks. And outside of that, just with our volunteer program, like I mentioned, our volunteer core leaders really are critical in making sure that our volunteer program happens. So myself and our volunteer program coordinator aren't at all of our volunteer work days. We wish we could be, but our volunteer leaders, we have about 45 of them, are on the ground representatives and ambassadors for the workday. So that's a little insight to the volunteer program model.
With 20 people working on the permanent staff, that sounds like some heavy lifting to me. Now, we're coming out of the pandemic. I would imagine that state parks were more important to people than they ever were before because they could walk into open space. Is advocacy easier for the parks? Do you see the program growing? Do you see people having more interest in parks? Did people come out of this event with greater value for it? Is this a time when the California Parks Foundation is waxing? It's growing. This is the best time to be in it.
We definitely are. We're growing. We're actually in the middle of a strategic planning operation and kind of protocols for our organization to see what, to get really excited about what the future holds. I think all of us during the pandemic really did reflect and realize the importance of green space in our communities, whether it's a state park or a local park or kind of just a small little green patch in your neighborhood. I know anecdotally, a lot of our parks just found themselves completely overwhelmed with visitors during the pandemic, and we tried really hard to support them through grants and other ways to just make sure that our parks were open and safe for all of the kind of flood of crowds and visitors. They saw an uptick for sure during the pandemic.
One final question. As we've seen more people come after the pandemic, the next question would be, as winter is winding down, tremendous storms in California over the December, January period, biblical, it felt like, in their force. Do parks need any extra energy, volunteers, or love after such atmospheric events, I guess?
Yeah, I think, unfortunately in California, if it's not kind of the winter storms, we see impacts from wildfires. And so that's really why a lot of our focus and programming really is building climate resilient parks so that it is easier for our parks to manage some of these, natural occurrences that just don't seem to be going away. They are definitely getting more frequent. Unfortunately, right after something as big as the winter storms, a lot of our staff really take a while to even just understand the kind of the actual impacts in the park and create a plan. And so, the day after an event, we really don't have, volunteers on the ground or anything like that. But we work really closely with our partners and are really flexible with our grant rounds and kind of funds that we can give out to parks to make sure that we're there and, responding to events in real time, right? So we do our best. I think that with the volunteer program, we are seeing some of our, I am able to kind of be flexible with our partners and kind of pivot a planned project. And for example, down in Santa Cruz at Henry Cowell State Park, park staff called and asked, we actually have a lot of storm damage. There's like a ton of branches and debris in the campground. Can we kind of pivot and do that project instead of kind of the maintenance project we had planned? And so we just, in that case, we just kind of alert volunteers there's a change, and then we can get some folks on the ground and some hands in extra hands to our state park partners. So it varies, but as us being a nonprofit and just really wanting to be a supportive partner, we do our best to be flexible and respond to things when they come up.
Fantastic. Well, that's about all the time we have for today. I'd like to thank my guest, Melisa Potts. This was a wonderful organization to find out about and to read about. You can go to the website. You can become a volunteer, California State Parks Foundation, and look under volunteers. Very easy to do. I want to thank you for joining us, and I'll say for everyone, we'll see you next time on Community.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.
You as well. I enjoyed it. Thanks.
Thanks for joining us on Community Voices. If you represent a nonprofit that is interested in being a guest on Community Voices, email info@accesshumboldt.net. Access Humboldt, local voices through community media.